Next, though, you meet the Mullingar scientists who have developed what could be the ultimate reusable face mask.
Right now.
Midlands Today with Will Faulkner on Midlands 103.
Midlands 103.
Now, you may remember Irish Manufacturing Research. These are the clever people in Mullingar who've developed a new battlefield ventilator with hardly any moving parts, which would be ideal for deployment in some of the poorer parts of the world in the fight against COVID-19. Well, this isn't their only scientific and engineering challenge. And let's find out what else they've taken on. Dr. Andrew Lynch is Chief Innovation Officer at Irish Manufacturing Research. Andrew, good morning.
Good morning, Will. How are you, sir?
Very well, thank you. What challenge were you presented with face masks?
Well, I suppose I should explain first, this is a Cork accent. I've lived in the Midlands for almost 20 years with a Cork wife, so forgiveness.
I think you're adopted by now then. Well done.
I'm adopted by now. Thank you very much. I feel part of the family. I'll tell you, Will, this is a really interesting story. I suppose, we all remember back in March, April, the horrendous pictures that were coming on stream from northern Italy and a health system that was under serious pressure. And if you remember at the time, ventilators were a real pinch point, and I suppose an equivalent of ourselves in Northern Italy, another technology centre, was looking at a decathlon scuba mask, Will. So the kind of mask that goes over your face and it's sealed in, if you like, in that context. So
gotcha.
Those very clever guys out there, they said, right, we could use this to connect a person to a ventilator safely. They did some ideation on it, they did some designs, and they released the designs to open sources. And, organizations like IMR, ourselves in Mullingar, we would have replicated these, we would have worked on them as well. And the idea was that you could connect that decathlon mask, or D-mask as it was called internationally. And what happened at the time was Decathlon, that supply chain came under serious pressure because everybody wanted them. And the CEO of Decathlon globally, to his eternal credit, I must say, he froze their entire stock. And he said, right, we're only going to release these to nations that have coherent strategies or working with not-for-profit research facilities to solve the problem, if you like. And Ireland, as you know, Will, we produce over 50% of the world's ventilators. So, the expertise, the organizations, they're here on this island. So we felt a particular pressure in that context to step up to the plate. And indeed we did. Enterprise Ireland, the IDA, Science Foundation Ireland, ourselves, groups like Tyndall and Cork, all worked in ideation in building, the adapter from an additive manufacturing perspective, making sure that supply chain was clear right from China into the mainstream, and that it didn't interfere with existing supply chains for medical device product. That was released into the ether and was used particularly in the hospitals in New York, for example, when that COVID crisis was there. So we took that a step further. We were working with entrepreneurs, I mentioned, working with the Tyndall Institute down in UCC in Cork. And one of the things about the decathlon mask approach, we'll say, was that there was a potential for what they call sporalization of the virus itself. This is when you have someone wearing this mask and you're putting oxygen into their lungs, if you like, pumping, but the expel air that they were having may have COVID virus particles on it, or sporalization. So what we did was we worked with this group and we developed what is called a PMask, and I suppose P around preventative, if you like, or PPE and that type of approach. And what it does is it's a two-way protection mechanism. Now, this can be used away from a COVID. It can be used in real-world situations. Someone said to me earlier, it looks like something Darth Vader would wear. It's over your face, it's connected. But the really clever thing on this is that not only is there an adapter to the front of this unit that will filter air that's coming into your lungs, but equally, it will filter the air that you're expelling as a user on it.
Okay, and just so we grasp why that's important, I recall stories of emergency staff, those who were working in emergency departments, picking up COVID in high concentrations because they were around patients who, through no fault of their own, they were aspirating COVID all over the room. So would this prevent that patient from expelling the virus?
Correct, Will. And I suppose, look, from my own perspective, my mother was a nurse, my sister's a nurse, my sister-in-law is a midwife. We're all connected, to our healthcare workers, and very proud of them, obviously, on a personal and national level. And you're dead right. It's sporalization. It comes out in the expellant of in this case the patient. But I suppose we were we were looking at that from the perspective of somebody on a respirator, but equally somebody who's standing up at operational, for example, in an airline or a dentist or someone in a meat factory. And the idea was, could we build a mask that was, we'd say, predicated on that Scuba mask idea and staying away from the decathlon supply chain internationally, and build a unit and then work on very practical things, like making it lighter. The filters are more effective, the material that it can be seen through, and the IMR role, and the clever people you mentioned in IMR, Irish Manufacturing Research in Mullingar, far cleverer than I have to say, this group led by John Enright and his team. Like the rapid prototyping, the iterations that we would be doing would be working with citizens, mainly in Ireland, in the health force and dentist associations and meat factories and regular factories as part of our own network, and getting feedback from companies and progressing this along. The really positive news story out of this, I suppose, for me, is that, it's launched into a spin-out company. It's a commercial entity that's getting off the ground, which is very important. I think it's important that these things go beyond just research, ideation, and good ideas, and that they're out in the commercial world standing on their own 2 feet.
Yes. But actually develop that for us, because having a prototype or a concept is important and it's a breakthrough, but the test is how can you scale it up so that it's available in every conceivable setting at an affordable price where it's needed.
Correct. And like I think there, through no fault of anybody's, a lot of the activity that you see on the television sometimes is a small particle being built up. And part of the process that IMR were involved in with Enterprise Ireland, the idea was to build what we call commercially viable, sustainable, production or process lines of scale. And this is an example of the commercial partners got to be part of this, because, for example, they look after the distribution channels, they look after the packaging and making sure that it arrives in perfect spec and all of that type of thing. They stand over it from an insurance perspective. And then again, like I said, this PMAS group that's there, led by Dave Manning in Cork. This is a really nice group, because some of the work that we're doing post this particular activity, and of course IMR is at the rapid prototyping ideation phase with them, and our colleagues in Tyndall and UCD obviously as well, another technology centre. We're looking at iterations of this that are not quite available yet for that commercial space. Things like, what about just covering the mouth and nose and not the entire face? Making it a lighter unit again. What can we put sensors on this unit? Can we look at oxygen levels, for example, of the user? Can we look at temperature rising sensors? Can we look at changes in the practitioner's smell and taste and so on? So these are fantastic challenges. It's a lovely example of how, the academic and the research community is working hand in glove with the agencies like SFI and Enterprise Ireland and the IDA and our partners in the department, but equally reaching into the commercial reality that requires things like regulatory environment to be complied with and so on. I think that's a fantastic story. I think it's it's very good of you to allow me a little bit of time to explain.
A pleasure. And it does suggest we'll have further conversations into the future as you develop more and more of these ideas and bring them to a commercial point. But just on this mask, finally, how, and I know you've regulatory hurdles and you've industrial hurdles and so on, but how far away is it time-wise from being available in emergency departments, in airlines, and all the other settings it has potential to be useful in?
It has, absolutely. It's being trialed at the moment all over the world. New Zealand, America, Middle East. It's a phenomenal application. It's something we're very proud of from an Irish perspective. We expect to have that PMask, the group themselves expect to be launching actual product within the next 4 weeks. So I think there's a solution here that we could apply, for example, in meat factories and so on. It's the first ideation of it, it's the first iteration, but to your point, it's all of those commercial hurdles have been what we've been overcoming in the last 4 months of activity, and it's almost there, ready for use.
Well done in your efforts. We will talk again. Dr. Andrew Lynch, thank you.
Not at all, sir. Thank you for your time, Will. God bless.
Andrew is Chief Innovation Officer at Irish Manufacturing Research in Mullingar.